So good afternoon. We're getting started with our virtual fall seminar from NISAC. My name is Dave Lucas. I'm the Director of Finance and Intergovernmental Affairs at the New York State Association of Counties. And on behalf of our President, Jack Marin, and our Executive Director, Stephen Aquario, we're very happy that you could be joining us this afternoon for the second in 20 separate workshops for our fall seminar, which is going to run through much of the month of September. We'll be going from September 15th. As I said, there's 20 workshops we'll be doing. They're designed to bring the latest information on issues facing counties today. And we hope you can participate with us as we move counties forward together. Our hashtag you can see at the bottom of the screen there. And we also want to remind folks, let you know what's going on. We do have some contests that we're running, these virtual contests, and we encourage everyone to show their participation in the fall seminar by joining our virtual contest to win prizes from sponsors. For those of you on Twitter, we're having a weekly tweet off. Whoever tweets the most times throughout the week using the hashtag move counties forward together will win a sponsor prize. This week's tweet off prize is a JBL Bluetooth speaker, and don't forget to participate if you want to win. For those of you on Instagram, we're hosting a Counties Forward Together photo contest. So simply post a photo about how your county is moving forward with the County Forward Together hashtag and tag NYS counties. The winning photo will be selected at the end of the conference. And we also have a perfect attendance award. So if you're going for that, hopefully you were on the session this morning at 10 a.m. on elections. So we'll be drawing one person at the end of the seminar randomly for a prize from the sponsor. So you can visit our website at nisac.org/contest to learn more about how these events will work. So thank you, Kate. We want to thank our sponsor today, Absolute Auctions Realty, for sponsoring this workshop today. They've been a great partner for NISAC over the years. Their mission is to provide professional auction services with outstanding results. One of the big things they do for counties is tax foreclosures. And a really interesting question is, how does that work during COVID-19? And it's a really great question. But as of October 15th, based on information from the Chief Administrative Judge, we will be able to move forward again with tax foreclosure auctions. So Absolute Auctions and Realty has 3 selling options: live, online, and a live online combination. So we're going to take a moment here to hear a little bit from the sponsor and then get started with the workshop.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Gableman, President and Principal Broker of Absolute Auctions and Realty. We know you had budget plans and they've been greatly interrupted. 2021 deficits don't appear to be looking any better either. The pandemic has taken your careful budget planning and depleted it. Payroll demands, sales, and Fed tax reductions, all of it has had you rethink your plan. Now it's time to adjust and reimagine a new normal. And we know you need your revenue to succeed. How do tax foreclosure auctions work in COVID-19? Great question. Chief Administrative Judge stated that as of October 15th, we're good to go. Absolute Auctions and Realty has 3 selling options: live auction, online only auction, and an exciting online live auction hybrid. With all of these options, bidders complete their paperwork online with an easy, verified, and touchless process. And our team will take care of all the necessary paperwork, auction payments, transfer documents, and quick claim deeds, ensuring social distancing with the bidders and your staff. Now, I know other auction companies are offering a no-cost auction solution for selling tax foreclosed real estate just like we do. Yes, we have a higher buyer's premium. Why? You know that saying, you get what you pay for? We have over 25 years experience returning over 40,000 parcels to the tax-paying rolls, utilizing advanced technology, and we achieve higher results. Being active leaders in the State and National Auctioneers Association, we continue to use our education to help you grow. Ready to start? I'm glad to hear it. Give me a call today to get answers to your questions, and we can get you on the auction calendar today.
Thank you. Thank you again to Absolute Auctions and Realty for sponsoring this workshop. I just want to remind participants, if you have questions during the presentation, you can just type them in on the question panel on your webinar dashboard, and we'll take them up after the speakers finish the presentations. This session is particularly about county budget challenges. We're going to hear from two presenters today. The first is from Orange County. They have not yet introduced their 2021 budget, but like all counties, they've taken a lot of actions during the current year to help them get through 2020 and to help set up a better situation going into 2021. Our second speaker is from Tompkins County, Jason Molino, and he will be providing an update on the budget they introduced last night. So we'll be hearing from a county that's actually put their budget on the table already. So to get started, we'll start with Deb, and I'll just do a brief introduction of both of the speakers. Deborah Slazinski is the budget director from Orange County. She's been with the county for over 24 years, and it looks like to be a lifelong resident of Orange County, going to Goshen High and SUNY Orange. In the early 1990s, Deborah implemented a universal transportation system for Orange County's residents to receive medical care, to alleviate the daily use and cost of utilizing taxi cabs. Her 24 years in county government have been in the Department of Public Works, Health, and the Budget Department. In August 2017, she was promoted to Deputy Budget Director, and then in February of 2019 became the Budget Director. Deborah proudly has served in the community on many boards and positions, including the school board. She's currently a member of the Chamber of Commerce for her town, treasurer of the Florida Public Library, member of the New York State Government Finance Officers Association, and she lives in Warwick with her husband, 2 children, and 5 grandchildren. Congratulations on that. And we'll also be hearing after that from Jason Molino, who is the county administrator in Tompkins County. As in that position, he acts as the chief executive officer for the county. Jason's a credentialed local government management professional by the International City County Management Association. Mr. Molino joined the county in January 2018 after serving for 12 years as a city manager in Batavia. While in Batavia, Jason played a key leadership role in a number of economic development initiatives, including establishing a state brownfield opportunity zone in the heart of downtown of Batavia, creating the first brownfield redevelopment pilot increment financing district, and authorizing property tax exemptions of redeveloped zombie and vacant homes. Also secured a number of grants for infrastructure projects. So right at this time, I'll turn it over to Deb. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Good afternoon, and thank you all for attending today's presentation. My name is Debbie Slazinski, and I am the Budget Director for Orange County. The year 2020 has proven to be a year like no other, a turning point in history that will be studied for years to come. The long-term economic implications of the changes we face depend on many unknown factors. Each of us face different yet similar challenges. In order to mitigate some of the fallout, I'm going to discuss some of the actions Orange County took during the last 6 months. Okay, so change this slide. Next slide. Okay. Orange County is located approximately 60 miles northeast of New York City. The county is the largest agricultural producer in the Hudson Valley, home to Woodbury Common, numerous medical companies, and next year Legoland will be opening in Goshen. Next slide. The first quarter of any new year still has a large focus on closing out the prior year. At the end of the first quarter of this year, an economic reality like no other hit our nation. With help from our department heads, a 2020 year-end projection was completed. While any projection is difficult, this forecast is very uncertain. Economic conditions continue to change quickly, and actual revenue losses will fluctuate. The GDP decreased almost a third in the second quarter of 2020, the worst decrease in over a century. Travel restrictions and quarantines are still being required, and we await the possibility of a second wave in conjunction with flu season. Next slide. Okay. So in Orange County, our 2020 adopted budget is $817 million. The county share of sales tax in our budget is $221 million, or about 27%. When the pandemic struck, all of our brick and mortar stores were shuttered, including the more than 250 high-end outlets at Woodbury Common. And for those of you who don't know what Woodbury Commons is, in the southern portion of Orange County, it's a very large outlet center where people come from many different countries, states, and even different countries to shop. Okay, so it is high end. We have many people come from like China and do purchasing and take it back to those countries for resale. The stores were closed for 3 full months and had a staggered reopening over the summer. So my first challenge is, how do you project sales tax through the end of the year with this virus? I've used the guidance that NYSEC provided early on and have tracked every payment. In the period March through May, Orange County's taxable sales were down over $576 million over the same time last year. Currently, through August, our sales tax is down 13.5%. We were lucky enough that we had a strong start to the year, which has helped mitigate some of our losses. As you can see on the chart that's before you, we're starting to inch closer to our 2019 numbers, and you can see where we were in the beginning of the year. But there was a very large gap between May and July. And can I just recommend, if you have not already done so, take a look at the information that NYSEC has sent out regarding the sales tax categories. When we looked at ours here in Orange County, you can see that the clothing category was down 80%, and that is directly related to the closure of Woodbury Common. And this is great information that can help you with your projections for sales tax. The next slide. Okay. Tourism is another large industry in Orange County. With the emergence of agritourism and the many other attractions and festivals in Orange County that bring visitors and sales and hotel tax. We'd also planned a Legoland opening in July 2020, but construction on that project was halted and opening was postponed until next year. When we prepared the 2020 budget, we did make a conscious decision not to include any revenues related to Legoland, since there was no historical data. It was a decision that we're very happy with. Through August, our hotel tax is down 40%. And as state and local attractions have started to open over the summer, our tourism department has done a tremendous job working with chambers of commerce to get people to visit Orange County with initiatives like a new tourism map. We've created our own craft beverage tour app for your phone that lets you know what facilities are open. We have an Escape New York City advertising that brings day trippers to Orange County. We have a Keep Calm and Check This Out initiative, and that identifies restaurants that do takeout, outdoor dining, and local markets and farms. This has been very helpful, and we're seeing people visit many of our venues since they cannot visit other states without quarantining. The next slide. Okay, so currently we are expecting a deficit of $25 to $35 million in sales tax and approximately $2 million in hotel tax. And this is including the expense that we'll take with the distressed hospital funds also. The next slide. Okay. And in addition to what I just discussed, Orange County, like all of your counties, is seeing a reduction in many of our other revenue streams. Orange County receives revenue from Sullivan County Casino, and since that was closed, we've received no payments. We expect a loss of $2 million. Department of Motor Vehicle offices in all our counties have been closed, resulting in a loss of revenue of about $1.5 million in Orange County. We are now open by appointment only, which continues to reduce the revenue. We're hopeful that will be able to move forward with the auction for delinquent properties, which we have scheduled now for November. And we are still unsure of state revenues. Will the current withholding plan become permanent cuts? Will this result in the loss of hundreds of millions of dollars in counties and state aid, which in many instances we will be spending prior to a final decision from the state? As much as possible, we are reducing our state spending by 20%. But we do have one positive note. In a year of anomalies, this will be the first time in 10 years that our revenue from golf will exceed the budget. The county executive made a conscious decision in the spring to open all of our park facilities, and golf has been a big revenue producer. Next slide. Okay. Some of the strategies that we did implement include a cost reduction plan by the departments, a hiring freeze, a separation incentive, voluntary layoffs, a justification for all purchases. We've put a freeze on commodity and equipment spending as of September 30th. We have a freeze on travel and conferences, and we have a pause on capital spending. Next slide. Early on, we knew we had to make some serious decisions. Our county executive has been clear from the beginning that his goal is to not have to lay anyone off. By the end of March, we asked each department head to come back with a plan to reduce their budget by 15%. While not all departments could achieve that level of savings without staffing reductions, we were able to identify and save approximately $10.5 million in contractual and equipment cuts. Additional savings were factored in based on current vacant positions. We did also include 15% cuts to our contracted agencies, such as Soil and Water and Cornell Cooperative Extension. I just want to stress that it was a very collaborative effort between the administration and all of our departments. So that was a big help that they brought in right away. Next slide. Our 2020 operating budget included 2,482 positions. In March, we had 181 vacant positions. As soon as the pandemic hit, we instituted a hiring freeze. While there were a few exceptions related to public health, Orange County has held steadfast to not hiring any position that is funded by taxation. The next slide. I think, could you go back one? Sorry. Okay, and currently we have 286 full and part-time vacant positions, and we have saved approximately $11.7 million. I do expect that number to reach $19 million by the end of the year. Next slide, sorry. Okay. In order to reduce staff without layoffs, in May we offered a separation incentive. This program offered a payout to employees to separate from the county. It did not have to be a retirement based on years of service. You did have to have at least 10 years of county service to participate. And for example, if you had 10 to 20 years of service, your payout was $10,000 and it went up from there. The next slide. While successful, I do feel our shortened turnaround time led to fewer employees taking advantage of this offer. We notified staff on May 14th. They had to advise us of their intent by June 12th and leave the county service by June 30th. With that said, we still did have 63 participants in the program and anticipated savings of salary and benefits of $1.9 million. Next slide. Okay, at the same time that we announced the incentive, we announced a voluntary temporary layoff or furlough program, whereas eligible employees could take advantage of the enhanced federal unemployment insurance. Employees associated with the public health and safety were not eligible for this program. This was made available for the months of June and July in month-long increments. The county would maintain their health insurance status with the requirement that the employee would maintain their personal contribution. The next slide. Okay. Most employees took advantage of the furlough for both months, and the county realized a savings of $425,000. You can see the breakdown on the slide. This also allowed our employees to address child care issues or any compromised immunity situations that they might have within their household. The next slide. Okay. We also felt that we needed to take a hard look at purchasing, and we made it clear that only essential spending was allowed. Additionally, we knew we would be spending funds on PPE, remote work needs, and the overall response to the pandemic that were not budgeted. So before any requisition would be approved, we required a justification, and staff from my office and the county executive's office would review the daily requests. Very labor-intensive process, but I do believe that the process has had an impact. As I looked at our actual expenditures through August of this year compared to last year, we've spent $20 million less. So we're really very happy with this, and we're going to continue this through the end of the year. Okay, the next slide. Travel and conferences really took care of themselves with the restrictions put in place. We have basically suspended conferences through the end of the year and have seen a savings of approximately $100,000. As far as our capital plan, we have basically hit pause on most projects unless they are of a health or safety nature. We're down about $2 million compared to the same time last year. The next slide. With all the action that we have taken, I still expect Orange County to see a deficit for 2020 of approximately $35 to $40 million. Here in Orange County, I still feel that the fall season will help us recover and we can shrink this deficit a little bit further. However, there are still many wild cards out there. I'm sure many of you are experiencing the same situation that we here in Orange County are. This is basically the end of my presentation. I will take any questions at the end. I wish you all the best of luck with the 2020 and into the next year. And on the next slide is my information if you have any other questions. Oops. Okay, thank you.
So Jason Molino is our next presenter, and if you're ready to go, we can turn it over to you, Jason.
Great. Thank you, Dave. And Deb, thank you for that presentation. I look forward to Legoland. I know my younger son will enjoy visiting. So thanks for that good presentation. Thank you, everyone. It's good to kind of see you today. I hope you're doing well and appreciate all the hard work you're doing over the past 9 months as county leaders and the challenges that we've all faced with COVID-19. A little bit about Tompkins County. Oh, well, all right, hold on. But a little bit about Tompkins County. We're in central New York. We're about a little more than 100,000 people. We have Cayuga Lake in the middle of us. About a $200 million budget, operating budget, 770 employees, and we have 3 higher ed institutions, TC3, which is our Tompkins Cortland Community College, Ithaca College, and Cornell University. So for us, higher ed is an important industry, and I'll definitely talk a little bit in this and how that has impacted our budget. Let let's start with the first slide. So we did submit the budget. I proposed the budget to the legislature last night and gave a budget presentation, which is pretty much most of what I'll show you today. The bottom line is no layoffs, and this was a priority for the legislature. It was a priority for me to ensure that we could accomplish this with an unknown future, but it was important that we value our employees, and we wanted to ensure that they had opportunities to them. So while the budget proposes an elimination of 47 positions, FTEs, which is about 6% of our workforce, we had a placement strategy for 18, and 18 of those positions were filled or are filled now. And we found other positions in the organization, looked at their minimum qualifications, were able to place them following all civil service rules and collective bargaining agreements. So kudos to our HR staff and the department heads that were willing and understanding of taking on additional staff. And those staff members are filling which would otherwise be filled positions, or that positions that will become vacant shortly, and that they'll fill them. So we're happy to propose a budget that has no layoffs. The tax levies, it's a proposed just under a 5% tax increase. That's a levy increase. Our tax cap was 0.88%, so it was unlikely that we would stay under that. The rate only went up 1.17%. That's because of the large growth in tax base that we have. And there's about an additional $5 increase on the solid waste fee that we have for all county residents. All in all, it's an $83 impact on an average home or median home of about $200,000. Revenue concerns, very similar to Deb. You're going to find a lot of commonalities, which I would imagine you'll find in your own budgets. We have about a budgeted about a 9% decrease in sales tax compared to the current year, about a 55% decrease in casino revenue. So for us, we get 2 casinos, Tioga and Del Lago, and in normal years we were getting around $2 million in 19, and now we've budgeted around 600,000, which is about a 55% decrease from the current year's budget. And of course, the looming 20% potential reduction in state aid or greater, and that's an unknown, and I'll talk about a little contingency with budget. Next slide. So this is just a little bit of a comparison of what we were dealing with. Usually I show this slide showing prior years, but in this case, I thought it'd be important to show just the last few months. So we had Tompkins County, Southern Tier, and New York State. In this instance, the comparison is just showing where we were in July of 19 compared to where we are in July of 20. You can see we've all been impacted negatively by unemployment, and this obviously drives a lot of revenue, particularly sales tax for us. It also drives a lot of public assistance cases. Next slide. SNAP applications. This again is usually an annual review, but instead we decided to show some monthly review. Again, SNAP applications, you can see they spiked in March and April from 2020 to compared to 2019, and then dropped again in May, June, and July. And that's primarily because of the enhanced unemployment benefit. That counted as income and disqualified folks from receiving SNAP benefits, and then spiked back up when that enhanced unemployment benefit kicked in again. Next slide. TANF cases. So, I imagine most folks are also experiencing that a continual decline in TANF cases, as it's a federal benefit with a 5-year lifetime eligibility. And on the converse side of it, we're seeing an increase in safety net benefits. The benefit of TANF is that it is 100% federally funded. The negative aspect of safety net is that it is 79% locally funded. Next slide. I'm sorry, 71% locally funded. So as you can see here, we had a little bit of a spike in safety net cases over the past March, April, May, June, July, and into August. And some of this a lot of this is due to COVID. Some of it is also due that a lot of the recertification requirements for safety net cases were open or easily renewable or recertifying. So therefore, folks weren't removed from certain cases where otherwise they may have been or may not have been able to recertify. Nonetheless, safety net in this case is more of a local share on our part than it is for TANF. Next slide. So major budget drivers, I'll talk about some of these major budget drivers on both the revenue side and expenditure side. Next slide. Sales tax, again, a very similar probably to many of you. A little history of sales tax. On average, it's been about 2.5% growth over the past 15 years. Which is good solid growth. There's been 3 years of exceptions where there were some slight regressions, but the last 3 years has been pretty remarkable. Growth year over year been substantial. We're estimating though, then March comes around and sales tax bottoms out. And what we're doing, similar process, I think what Deb explained, monitoring at a month-to-month basis. We did some modeling, taking the top 15 categories of sales tax and kind of project it out over the rest of the year to determine how we think certain industries may impact the total sales tax receipts month by month. But right now we're projecting a 14% decrease compared to the 2019 actual. Next slide. This just kind of shows you a visual of the budget is just under a 9% decrease from 2020's budget. But as you can see, we always like to see the actual above the budget. That's always a good day when the year ends and you've got more coming in than what we budgeted, and we had benefited from that over the past several years. Like most of you, we are not going to be in that situation again this year, unfortunately. So we want to make a course correction. Again, estimating sales tax in a normal year is generally difficult, let alone throw in a global pandemic of which we don't fully understand yet is near impossible. So we expect sales tax receipts in 21 to be better than 2020, but obviously be worse than 2019. And for obvious reasons, unemployment and economic recovery will have a major impact on sales tax receipts. Next slide. In comparison, January through August sales tax for us was 14% below what they were in 2019. A little sidebar, a few weeks ago or a month or so ago, NISAC was able to share with us some of the comparisons of March to May sales for 2020 compared to 2019. And unfortunately, we were a leader in that we were the third worst of the state for that period of time. Not exactly the leader we want to be, but the interesting correlation there is between March and May. In March, all of higher ed, Cornell, Ithaca College, and TC3, our community college, sent all of their students home. They shut down and everybody went home and bracing for the outbreak in the pandemic. Also, what happened is in May, graduations didn't take place. Graduations for all 3 institutions are major drivers in our economy. So the fact that from March to May, where higher ed and no students were in the community and graduation didn't take place, made sense, or didn't make sense, but there was definitely understanding into the correlation as to why we were the third worst in terms of sales for that period of time, just to show you the impact higher ed has on our community. Of course, what doesn't help our sales tax position is when the state decides to take a piece of it off the top. The Distress Hospital Fund and the AIM aid did not help at all. And also, obviously, economic recovery is unpredictable. Next slide. The one thing that we have going to our advantage is what I would call better than average tax base growth. We have benefited very well. City of Ithaca has had a lot of growth in it over the past decade, and the surrounding areas, the rural areas, again, a lot of growth, which is great to see. I don't know how many folks have seen, their tax base growth, over a third over the past decade. And again, this year we had a good growth, about just under 4% for 2020. Our makeup is about 50-50 in terms of residential compared to commercial properties. Our residential market has remained very strong, and part of that is a shortness of supply, which keeps the values high. Part of it also is we're starting to see a lot of people, particularly from downstate, starting to move upstate, and that has kept our real estate market strong. Commercial market is yet to be determined as to how it's going to react over the next 6 to 12 months. Next slide. Casino revo, again, came into play for us in 2018, Tioga and Del Lago. Del Lago had some revenue issues and ownership issues over the past 2 years, but nonetheless, the revenue kept coming in, $2 million. We actually budgeted $1.5 million this year. And then with the closures in March, pretty much stopped everything. And then the recent reopening, or the limited reopening of a 25% capacity, both are expected to reopen or may have already reopened. I don't know exactly, but nonetheless, our budget, we're decreasing by $800K or 55% compared to the current year in anticipation of some slow revenue growth there. Next slide. State aid. you know, I don't know what to say about this. You know, the state is having liquidity issues. They've withheld or temporarily withheld or whatever they want to call it for certain revenues up to 20% in certain instances. I think it's been understood that they've been awaiting a federal relief bill, and the governor's made it very clear that if one isn't passed, we could experience some serious problems. For us, if we were to have a 20% cut in state aid, it's a little over 5 million. You know, so we're hoping, we're bracing for a bad situation, but hoping it's not as bad as that. Next slide. Again, workforce, proud, and we think it's probably one of the better accomplishments with this budget is that we were able to reduce about 47 positions, about 6% again. 2/3 of the departments are experiencing reductions in staff, including my own, and 18 employees that would otherwise their positions are being proposed at being eliminated. We have relocated or found other positions for them. It's not all the same pay grade, but they are full-time positions with benefits, paying a retirement system, and we're now in the process of seeing if they're interested in these positions. So we think that's a good accomplishment. Next page. Excellent. Again, this is simple. We have one agreement that's in place out of our 4 labor unions. 3 of them, 2 are expired and 1 is set to expire this year. So we have some work ahead of us on the labor side of things. Next slide. Healthcare costs for us. We did have an early retirement incentive, which we had about 40 people take, which was good. About 10 or so of those positions will not be filled. We also were able to do some significant restructuring with retiree healthcare a few months ago, which saved quite a bit of money and will save a lot moving forward. We provide retiree healthcare. It's not in any of our collective bargaining agreements, so we provide it at our leisure, so to speak. The legislature, we proposed some changes to it to make it cleaner and streamline it. It was very administratively burdened, and we were able to ensure that retirees continue to have coverage, but at a significant reduction, and it was received well and adopted by the legislature. So we were able to see a decrease in some healthcare costs. Unfortunately, the pension costs increased equally, and so for the most part, our fringes were relatively flat for the year. Next slide. Mandates, again, seeing increases in safety net, reductions in our foster care, foster care aid, and then also 730. This is when individuals are arrested but not fit to stand trial and have to be hospitalized. We used to share, as we all did, share 50% of that cost. Now we share 100% of that cost. So we had significant increases in costs under mandated costs, but they were balanced by some EFMAP aid, which we greatly appreciate and would love to see more of. Next slide. Sponsored agencies. So these are our agencies. You can see them at the bottom. Cornell Cooperative Extension, Economic Development. TCAT is our basically our transportation. Several other agencies we provide funding to. They agreed, and also when I sent out the budget instructions, I had asked all departments, including agencies, to reduce their budgets by 12%. So everyone complied with the 12% reduction. Some of my proposed budget to the legislature reinstated certain elements of different departmental budgets based on need, but everyone complied with the budget request, which was a decrease of a 12% local share in their budgets. Next slide. So generally, we have about a $900,000 contingency. Again, our budget is about $200 million. Well, it's about $195 million this year. It's about $189 million. What I proposed was an additional $1 million in the contingent fund to be able to be there for unknowns. As I mentioned earlier, the unknown with respect to state aid cuts is something of concern. It's probably one of the most unknown elements of what's to happen in the future. If we were to have a 20% across the board, we could be in the range of several millions, and we have put a $1 million contingency aside for these unknown, either increased mandate costs or cuts in state aid, and we'll observe as we go through things. Unfortunately, as you all deal with as we do, come January, after our budget is adopted, is when we see what the governor's proposing, and a quarter into our year, do we have to make sometimes adjustments. Next slide. Capital reinvestment. County legislature was very committed last year to achieving net zero emissions by a particular date, and the direction I got was, Jason, put together a capital plan that will achieve a net zero emissions in our county operations for our county facilities and fleet in a reasonable time frame that is a reasonable cost. And what we proposed to them and they adopted was about a $30 million investment over the course of 15 years, essentially making improvements to all of our county facilities and replacing our fleet with electric vehicles by 2035. Trying to maintain that policy priority, we looked at our capital plan and we had to adjust that a little bit, but we still are on the track to achieving a net zero emissions operations by 2040. Still a very good and aggressive schedule, and still around a $30 million commitment. We had to recommend a decrease in our annual allotment for capital, the capital program. This year we had about a $6.8 million annual appropriation. I had to cut it down to about 6.1. And over the course of the next several years, based on several projects, using about 8 million of general fund balance and capital reserves, probably a 50-50 mix between both of those. Next slide. Just goes to show you some of the highlights of the capital planning. We have yet to discuss this, we will next week, but some of the highlights of the capital program: 30 million for green facility improvements, about 28 million for a downtown campus to consolidate some of our offices. This was in this year's budget, and I'm proposing to continue to do for future years. About a $4 million upgrade to our public safety building. That is scaled back quite a bit, partly because we're starting to see some positive impacts from bail reform and criminal justice reform. So we want to see how that plays out over the next few years. $6 million to cover on improvements that have been done at the airport, and 6.5 for a backup dispatch center, and again, more money to electrifying our fleet, which will be completed in the next 4 years. Next slide. This is just a snapshot of fund balance. This kind of shows you a little bit, if we were to stick within our fund balance policy of 18% of general fund revenues. If we had this assumes also a $5.5 million shortfall of the year, which is roughly about 3.5%. I think Deb from Orange County talked about a $40 million shortfall, and her budget seems to be a little bit around that same spot. Hopefully that's less, but this was just a snapshot to show the legislature, based on the proposed budget, uses of fund balance and potential shortfall, that we could still maintain a relatively safe fund balance going into an unknown future. Next slide. Airport, again, the airport, air travel has taken a hard hit. Business and leisure travel is down. We have a commercial airport in Tompkins County. We're fortunate in that way. Just did a $40 million project, and unfortunately, COVID has hit air travel particularly difficult. The customs facility, a new customs facility, just opened up as well this year. So the budget is being proposed with some operating loss. Air travel, as well as transportation, did get quite a bit of bump from CARES Act money, so we have some ability to cover that cost, potentially next year and the year after, but we'll see how it goes. And then just the remaining balance is some potential awards and grant awards that we will get to balance out the additional borrowing that we had to take for the $40 million airport expansion. Next slide. Our solid waste fund, or recycled materials and management, proposing again a $5 increase in fee. This fund and this department has worked on some budget adjustments over the past few years. We've been able to increase the fee that have helped stabilize the fund, only looking at a very small operating loss, which we'll have some fund balance to balance it with. For us, we're in the middle of an RFP review process for management of our solid waste facility. That's a contracted service, and this is a 10-year, basically a 10-year contract that's up for renewal. So we are assessing the RFP right now. And their costs are uncertain, so this may change this fee over the next 30 to 60 days, depending on what is recommended to the legislature. Next slide. Risks, sales tax, we don't know what's going to happen. State aid, again, don't know what's going to happen. Public assistance, generally, as unemployment goes up, we start to see increases in public assistance requests, and enterprise units, both our airport and solid waste facilities, both good services. Unfortunately, they're getting hit particularly hard, and we don't know what their futures are, so we have to monitor them closely. Next slide. Tax cap. It's a great. Tax cap was tough this year, less than 1%. Had good large rollover, but the sales tax credits to the towns really decreased our capacity and ate into our capacity with the tax cap. Next slide. Again, just a final review, under a 5% tax levy increase. no layoffs despite 6% reduction in the workforce. We continue, I think, to put forward a solid capital program. State aid is an unknown and we have to watch it, and I assume we'll all be busy between January and March depending on what the governor puts out, and trying to lobby Albany to make some positive changes. And economic recovery, again, is going to drive our second largest revenue, which is sales tax. That's about 32% of our general fund budget. Next slide. And this is just the average impact on the homeowner, which is basically a homeowner of 200,000, which is a median home value of about $83 for that person, increase in tax rate. So next slide. That's it. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jason and Deborah. We do have a few questions that have rolled in, a couple of general ones. We will, and Kate will correct me if I'm wrong here, we will be posting the slides online after the presentation here. I'm not sure when exactly, but we will have them posted. A quick question for Deborah. You had mentioned, a potential $35 million shortfall that might shrink a little bit by the end of 2020. Is the general plan there to use reserves at this point to cover that and then move forward into 2021?
Yes, that would be our plan.
Okay. There was also another question here. It's about the 20% reductions and whether certain things are carved out from that. I can address that issue and I can send it out to the group as well. But off the top of my head, there's any direct payments to public assistance recipients, cash assistance payments, those are protected from reduction. Anything that's required under federal law, those payments could not be cut by 20%. Anything necessary for the state to meet debt service is something that is also protected. And anything that's linked to what would be considered a court judgment. And in that line, as far as we're concerned, the funding for oils, your Office of Indigent Legal Services, some of that money would potentially be protected because it is in response to a court judgment, but not all of it. Some of it, but not all of it. So that would potentially be protected. I'm just looking through other questions here. And there's a general question, and I'll put this out to Jason too, is what is the think at this point about the state enforcement of exceeding the tax cap? And I'll just start it off that you are potentially subject to a loss of your raise the age funding if you do go over the tax cap. The state so far has basically said, you do have the ability to plead poverty to the state, to go in and say, I had to exceed the cap for the following reasons. And I think in this year, there's a lot of reasons for anybody to potentially be going over the cap with the loss of revenue on your local revenues and also on the state aid cuts. So, Jason, you guys clearly went over the cap here. What was your thinking there as far as, how you're going to deal with the state?
So we don't really get a whole lot of raise the age reimbursement to begin with. And that was a question I'd asked the departments. And it really is a negligible impact. Also, it didn't seem unrealistic that a claim of hardship was out of the reach right now, considering the circumstances. So, as you can see, the tax cap for us was less than 1%. It was less than a few $100,000. It's just impractical for us. That means we'd have to cut another $2 million out of the budget, and it just didn't seem like to be a practical option for us. It's nothing that, to be honest with you, I really didn't talk much about it with the legislature, only because the impact is virtually nothing. We're not, there isn't a lot of reimbursement. We haven't seen a lot of activity as a result of Raise the Age, to be honest with you. So that's it. That's all I had behind it.
All right, thank you. There's a question for both of you. And Jason, you mentioned a little bit about the change in the Medicaid weekly shares from some of the federal enhanced FMAP and other actions the state had taken. Do you guys have plans on how you're gonna address that in 2021 for the full year?
So for us, obviously we incorporated some of that change into the budget. And we started to see some of the decrease, or we will this year, but for 21, we incorporated that change into our Medicaid weekly share.
For the full year?
Yes,
Or just,
well,
okay,
based on the information that we had.
okay,
Yeah.
all right. Deborah, have you thought about that? I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Deb?
No, I just said similar here in Orange County. They are taking that into consideration in our DSS budget.
Okay. Yeah, I just, for those on the phone that, there's enhanced federal money as part of the CARES Act early on. It's a 6% increase, a little over 6% increase in the federal matching rate for Medicaid. And in New York, part of that savings passes through to the counties. It's not always easy getting it out of the state, but they did make an adjustment. Those savings are occurring on a quarterly basis. And the trigger point is if the federal public health emergency is in effect on the last day of the quarter, they will pay that enhanced federal matching rate for the entire quarter. So the next quarter date is September 30th, and it's a week away, basically, or 2 weeks away. Clearly, we're still in a public health emergency. Hopefully that'll be retained. So that would free up another quarter of FMAP. The current public health, the federal public health emergency is currently extended right now through October 23rd, or right around that date. But that's subject to the HHS secretary, who could change that at any point in time. They could declare earlier the public health emergency is ended, and on October 23rd, they also have the ability to extend it again for another 90 days. So there could be a possibility of some more FMAP coming through, and then the state would have to figure out how they want to advance those savings to the counties, which would usually be an adjustment in the weekly shares. So I also have another question here regarding the protected items from cuts in the budget. Those cuts are only protected as authorized in the 2021 budget. So next year's budget could change what is or isn't protected. Also to remember here too is the governor's chosen a 20% across the board cut in local aid, but he has the ability to pick which line items he wants to take money from. So there's been a lot of concern by schools right now in different school districts that 20% in one school district is not the same as 20% in a different, based on how much state aid they get. So if there's an adjustment made there where some school districts take less of a hit, that means someone else has got to absorb more state aid cuts. So the 20% could go up, it could go down depending on federal aid, and we'll see how that pans out. Just reading another question here. Is Orange County taking a similar approach on their capital budget to Tompkins, maintaining commitment to a long-term capital plan, or has Orange County capital budget taking a bigger hit or halt?
We did go forward with our regular long-term projection over 6 years. And again, it will be a wait and see attitude at the beginning of the year as we see how the economy recovers, if we can continue. And there will be certain things that we can't, hold off on.
Okay. Another question coming in about should we not be counting on the EFMAP boost for all of 2021? We don't know right now. The federal money, the enhanced FMAP, is only available on a quarter by quarter basis, assuming the public health emergency is in place. There's other enhanced FMAP related to the Affordable Care Act, but that's a sort of a separate issue. We've been in a long-term disagreement now going on almost 4 years with the state about how much money has not been released to counties out of that pot. So all we know for certain from the state is through March 31st, 2021, the current weekly shares are guaranteed to be where they are. That's what the state has said. As I indicated, if more quarters of federal money become available, they could make another adjustment to weekly shares beyond April 1st next year, or do it immediately to get that money into county coffers quicker. Having said that, it took the governor almost 6 months to release the initial funding from the CARES Act. But it's a very unknown issue right now on how to budget for the remainder of the year on the Medicaid funding, and it's a big cost for counties, unfortunately. At this time, I'm not seeing any other questions. If I missed somebody, we do have a written record here of the questions, and we'll make sure we loop back with people on an individual basis. So I guess at this time, it's 3 o'clock. With no further questions, I think we can wrap up the session for today. And as I said, we'll get the online, we'll get the presentations online. And again, we want to thank our sponsor, Absolute Auctions and Realty. And thank you again, Deborah from Orange and Jason from Tompkins for participating. It's been very helpful. And I hope it brings information to the counties on how other counties are reacting. I do need to say that a lot of counties are in very different places here. Clearly, some of the downstate counties were hit a lot harder by the disease itself, by the virus, and the extent of their shutdowns. So the counties are approaching 2021 from a lot of different angles. There's a handful of counties today that are actually collecting more sales tax year to date than they did last year, but barely. They're barely above it, and I can't imagine anybody is above their budgeted sales tax amount. And then there's others that are 20% or more in the hole. So it's a very different approach counties are going to have to take to build their 2021 budgets. And they also, many counties are in a different position as far as their fiscal reserves go as they entered the pandemic and going into 2021. So we're going to see a lot of different budget proposals going forward. So I'd like to thank everybody for participating in this webinar session, and I hope you can make other sessions this week. The next scheduled session is tomorrow at 10 a.m. and it's on policing in 2020. It's entitled What We've Learned and How Do We Change? And this clearly is stemming from the things that have happened this summer and also the governor's executive order that requires counties to convene the policing groups within the county to discuss issues and determine if there's a way to alter policing practices. And that's tomorrow's session at 10 a.m. And from there, I will say thank you for participating, and hopefully we'll hear from you tomorrow. Thank you.